Thank you for purchasing a QBOT for your home quilting system. QBOT helps you to complete quilt tops, create home deck and wearable projects, and much more. This brief introduction will get your QBOT properly installed and ready for action. The first thing you will find is the user manual. This will provide details on QBOT installation, quilting, maintenance and care, troubleshooting, and warranty. This is the QBOT head. This reads the patterns and controls carriage movement. These are the drive assemblies which will be mounted to your quilting frame carriages. Let's take a look at the assembly. The QBOT drive wheels rotate clockwise and counterclockwise and will communicate with the QBOT head to move the carriages. This is where the wiring harness X and Y connections will be made. When making this connection, be sure you hear a click sound. This is the QBOT power supply and power cord. You will insert the power cord here. When you've plugged your power supply into a standard outlet or surge protector, this light will be illuminated. To connect the QBOT head to the drive assemblies, you will use the wiring harness. This is the standard wiring harness for use with mid-arm sewing machines. This is the wiring harness you will use for your long-arm sewing machine. These wires are slightly longer to match the longer arm of the machine. See the user's manual for a list of long-arm machines. The hardware provided with your QBOT is frame-specific and will contain all the components necessary to mount the QBOT to your quilting frame. These are the drive wires. They will be mounted to your quilting frame and carriage and wrap around the drive wheels of the drive assembly. Finally, you will find this installation DVD and your SD card. Both contain your QBOT collection of quilting designs. Let's get the QBOT connected. You'll notice there are several ports on the upper portion of the QBOT head. The wiring harness consists of 4 cables. Let's get them plugged in. First, plug in the X-axis cable to the port marked X-axis drive motor. Be sure you hear a click when you plug it in. Next, plug in the Y-axis cable to the port marked Y-axis drive motor. Be sure to hear that click. If you are using the QUILTER'S cruise control, plug the smaller modular connector into the port marked QCC encoder port. The next connection is the 3.5mm audio connector. Plug this into the port marked QCC remote port. The final connection is the power cord. Next, connect the other X-axis connector to the X-axis drive assembly. Be sure you hear the click sound to ensure it is seated securely. Now connect the other Y-axis connector to the Y-axis drive assembly. Be sure you hear the click sound to ensure it is seated securely. For a standard sewing machine setup, you'll need to connect your QBOT wiring harness to the QUILTER'S cruise control. Long-arm users may skip to the next portion of the video. There are several versions of the QUILTER'S cruise control. If you have a plastic enclosure, you may have a red, white or taupe, blue, or purple brain. The connections are the same for each. The first 2 connections, which may already be made, are the power cord and the connector cord, which goes from the QCC to the sewing machine. These are located on the left of the brain. Plug the small modular connector into the port marked encoders. This transfers the speed of the carriages to the stitch regulator. Next, plug the 3.5mm audio connector into the port marked remote switch. The QBOT turns the sewing machine on and off through this connection. You may have a Series 1 QUILTER'S cruise control that looks like this black box here. If you do, leave the encoders and wiring harness attached. You will need a 3.5mm to 2.5mm adapter for the remote port connection. This item is available at electronics stores or from Lighten Up Technologies. If you have a red metal QUILTER'S cruise control brain, the encoder and remote wire connections are made on the left side of the unit. The power connection at the bottom of the unit must also be made, although it is not shown here. Your QBOT reads designs that are stored on a memory card. We recommend using a memory card that has between 128 megabytes to 2 gigabytes of capacity. Place the memory card that came with your QBOT into the memory card reader on the right of the QBOT. You will hear a click sound to know that the card is fully inserted. Turn on the QBOT by flipping the switch on the left. You will see the welcome screen appear in the firmware revision number. You will then see the Quilt Record Options menu on the first line of the display. If you press go while the cursor is highlighted over the quilt choice, you will see the design menu appear. You can then scroll through the designs by pressing the up and down arrows. Here we are going to go through the process of choosing a design, selecting the scaling type, and choosing the stitching area. Using the navigation arrows, we are going to select the design FLWR-FRM, a flower design inside a square frame. Once we see the design title in the display, we use the right navigation arrow to move the cursor to the Start choice in the menu. Then press Go. You will then see the Scaling Type menu choice. Here we will choose 4-point scaling. That is, we will define the quilting area on the quilt using the 4 corners of the area. We will follow the instructions that QBOT gives us. First, move the carriage to the right upper point. When the carriages are at the upper right location that we want, we then press Go to lock in that coordinate. Now we are going to move the carriage to the right lower corner of the area and press Go to lock in that coordinate. Next we move to the left upper corner and press Go to lock that coordinate. And finally, we move to the left lower and press Go to lock in that coordinate. The Keep Proportion menu then appears on the screen. If we choose Yes, the design will be scaled to fit the area we have chosen, and it will appear undistorted from the original, not stretched. We are going to choose No because we want a finer fit to the selected area. Also, choosing Proportion No will automatically rotate and skew the block to fit the chosen area. After selecting the proportion method, you will see that you can set a rotation amount directly at the QBOT. For this design, we are going to use 0-degree rotation and press Go. QBOT then scales the file to the proper size to fit the chosen area. The area dimensions are then shown on the next screen. Pressing Go will now move the carriages to the start point of the design. After the carriages move to the start point, the Fine-Tune menu appears. You can use the up, down, right, and left navigation arrows to fine-tune the placement if necessary. With QUILTER'S cruise control equipped machines, pressing Go will start the sewing machine and the carriages will start automatically. If you have a long arm sewing machine with another brand of stitch regulator, start the sewing machine, then press Go. The machine will start sewing by taking a couple of tack-off stitches at the beginning, then will continue with the design. The display shows the name of the design, the scale factor, here 100%, the percentage done, and the velocity, here also 100%. Automatic quilting has never been easier. This design is made of 2 parts, an outer frame and an inner motif. The first part of the design is complete. This pattern was created in the optional QBOT software with 2 different color threads, so the screen will tell the color of thread that should be used, similar to embroidery machines. Pressing Go will move the carriages to the beginning of the second portion of the design. The familiar Fine-Tune menu appears. Again, you may make slight adjustments to the position if needed by pressing the navigation arrows. Press Go to resume quilting. It is a good quilting practice to move the carriages away from the end point, hold the upper thread, then move back to the same point. Cycle the needle to bring the bobbin thread up and trim your threads. This keeps the back of your quilt free from long thread ends that may get caught in your sewing machine later.